everyone. You are watching Tidal Flooding Talk. My name is Palma Accardi, and we're here live at the Irish Pub in Atlantic City.
I'm meteorologist Dan Skeldon. Thanks for being with us on a hot day. Hopefully you're in air conditioning. 100 officially in South Jersey today. Heat index 115, so sit back, relax in AC. Too hot to go to the beach. And join us with our most frequent by demand, by request guest, Thomas Heist from Thomas Heist Insurance Agency in Ocean City. Tom, welcome back.
Thank you, Dan.
It's been
very happy to be
Thank you
here.
for joining us again.
Thank you, Palma.
And
always fun.
You are a frequent guest. We have a lot of regular followers, but remind us who you are and what you do.
I am Tom Heist. We have an insurance agency, Thomas Heist Insurance Agency. We have 2 coastal locations, one in Ocean City and one in Margate. And we've been around for 54 years. So we've been around a long time, second generation business.
So you probably know what you're doing then. Practice makes perfect, right?
Hopefully, and we do a lot of flood insurance and have been doing it a long time. And, we've watched it change. It's been interesting. And we were very involved during Sandy in helping a lot of thousands of people get back into their homes. So, hopefully you keep doing it. Eventually you start to learn what you're doing.
And I do want to start with a personal story today, because we were talking off camera about this. We talk about tidal flooding all the time. It affects people in the Bay. It affects people in the Barrier Islands. We talk about nuisance flooding sometimes, but I don't live in a flood zone now, and actually had a flooded basement due to 6 inches of rain in about 2 hours. So even if you don't live in a flood zone, you can be a victim. So
Dan,
you had some interesting percentages there.
Yeah, they say that 25% of all flood losses happen outside of a special flood hazard area. A special flood hazard area is along the Barrier Islands, Ocean City, Margate, Atlantic City, the beach towns. Yeah. Special flood hazard area. They're in A and B zones.
Right.
But inland, it's a B zone, and they say a flood can happen anywhere in the country, up in a mountain.
Yep.
And one of the biggest losses I've ever seen was out in Galloway about 15 years ago, and I think they had like 13 inches of rain in 2 hours, and everyone in this little development was flooded. Every home was damaged.
I mean, you don't live in a river or a tidal basin or an ocean. I mean, you can still be a victim. So obviously, this is tidal flooding,
and it is cheaper. It's cheaper to buy flood insurance when you're not in a special flood hazard zone.
So something we may be looking into, but we'll bring the attention back to the coast, the islands, and the namesake of our show, Tidal Flooding Talk.
Now, what new is going on in flood insurance? I mean, you were on the show a few months ago, and you were talking about some changes that were occurring in flood insurance. What have you seen most recently?
Well, there are actually 2 big changes that are kind of right on the cusp. It looks like the National Flood Insurance Program has been going through a bunch of temporary reauthorizations over the last 4 years. And it looks like it's going to be actually reauthorized this end of September, October 1st. Now, I'm not sure how much money I would bet on this, but it does look like the Senate and House of Representatives and both sides of the aisle have come together, and they seem to be supporting this bill to renew the program for 5 years. What does that mean? It certainly helps the real estate industry. Nobody wants to see the program collapse when they're trying to buy a house or sell a house. So it will really be helpful if the program reauthorizes. And then there's a bunch of things in the new program that I think people are going to be happy about.
So it's nice to see, bipartisanship working. We don't talk politics on the show. There's a few things we don't talk, but it's nice that, obviously both sides see the importance of this to renew this instead of temporarily doing it every year, making it a little more permanent.
It's kind of a no-brainer. And if both sides understand that floods have happened and they're going to continue to happen, and they affect a lot of people, where they lose their homes or they're in a position where they have to elevate their home, it really makes sense to come up with a solid plan and help people and our country move forward. So I'm thrilled.
Now, do you think that they have always recognized the importance of flood insurance?
I do, but the battle has always been how much money do you give to the people who've had damage and how much premium do you charge people before the flood happens. So when you have this tension, there needs to be compromise. And it looks like there's compromise coming our way.
And what did the compromise involve? What's new in the renewal that maybe wasn't in the temporary reauthorizations or in the old plan?
Well, currently flood premiums can rise about 25% each year for the worst policyholders. For the average policyholder, it's probably 7-8%, but for the worst, it could be 25%. And we're saying they're going to bring that down to 9%.
Okay.
So it kind of slows down the rate increases, number one. Number two, it provides $1 billion of funds to mitigate properties that have had a flood loss. And that's a lot of money. I've never seen $1 billion, but I think there's a lot of zeros there.
9 of them, I think. Right?
See that? You're a smart guy.
Well, it's 1 billion degrees today, so I checked it.
Billion, a zillion?
So $1 billion set aside to help those people who have had multiple claims, and really it doesn't make sense to keep throwing money into a house that's loaded on the ground and it's going to happen again. And the Congress has finally realized that they don't want to throw good money after bad, and they're going to have these funds set aside to help people elevate their homes so that we can remove the worst risks out of the program.
And this is a question we've touched on before. You're capping the raise each year at 9%, which is great. We did something similar with property taxes in New Jersey,
yes,
because they were going through the roof. What can viewers do to cap increases, or like what things can they do to make that increase even less, or ideally zero?
That's a great question. Fortunately, today, there's more than one market selling flood insurance. In the old days, it was just the National Flood Insurance Program. They were the only market. Today, we have a new market called private flood insurance, private market.
This is what you were going over last
time. Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. And essentially, it's Lloyd's of London has a copycat policy. It's exactly word for word the same as the National Flood Program policy. Same coverage. And oftentimes, they provide the same coverage for less money. So they're not doing it on every home, but they're doing it for most homes. Now, if a home has had multiple losses, you're not going to be eligible for that program. But there's some properties that have a basement, which isn't a great thing in a flood hazard area. A basement at the shore, you're like, oh my gosh, terrible risk.
What's that?
Well, and a lot of homes do have basements on Absecon Island. And they pay a lot of money, but they've never had claims. So Lloyd's of London, through private market, is saying, hey, it might not be a great risk, but the claims don't bear it out. We're going to give those people a better rate. So in some cases, we're saving people 25, 30%. So that's an easy way to bring your premium down, is just get a quote through private market. Secondly, those homeowners who are not eligible, I always say get an elevation certificate, make sure that you have proper venting, because if you're going to be with FEMA, you might as well get the best rate. The best rate are the homes that have vents, they have a crawl space that is not below grade. So there's some things you can do to make your home better and get the best premium.
Now, I'm sure your agency gets a lot of phone calls every day with people asking questions. What do you think are like the most common misconceptions that people have regarding flood insurance?
That is a great question. I would say that people think that they're not going to be paid properly if they have a claim. And every time there's a claim, you have a lot of different experiences. People feel like they should have been paid more, but we've seen a lot of people feel like FEMA was very fair. In addition, private market actually not only meets the minimum policy that FEMA offers, but in many cases expands coverage. So where FEMA pays actual cash value, which is a depreciated amount, private market will pay replacement cost and not depreciate. So I think when you explain that to people, they were like, wow, I really didn't know that I can get better coverage for less money.
Now, at the top, you said 2 big changes.
Yes.
We talked about one, the extension of the NFIP.
Yes.
What's the second one? And delve into that a little bit.
Yes. Now, this is potentially could be bigger.
Okay.
And it really isn't making the news because it's not something that has to be passed by Congress. FEMA and the National Flood Program has the right in managing their program to administer their program to the best and most efficient way possible. And today, the private insurance industry uses a lot of data sources. In some cases, I've heard 1,000 data points from all these different sources, satellites and building codes, and I don't even know them all. But FEMA is going to revamp the way they rate a flood policy, and it's called Flood Rating 2.0. And essentially, they're going to be looking at two things. One, the proximity that the house is from water, and secondly, the cost to rebuild that structure. Okay? So let's talk about the first, proximity to water. Today, FEMA says we have an A zone for everyone that's kind of a little bit far from the beach, and we have the V zone for people that are closest to the water, and then we have this coastal leg, which is kind of sandwiched in between the A zone and the V zone. But potentially, every property based upon proximity could pay a different rate within the same zone, because it's just proximity to water. So there's homes that are closer to the water in an A zone than other properties. Secondly, they're using the replacement cost, the cost to rebuild that home. So if a home is $500,000 in an A zone, it may pay less money than a home that's $1 million or $2 million in that same flood zone. Today, FEMA does not do that. They're not looking at the actual cost to replace a structure. But they can go on to the web, the internet, there's a lot of information out there, and they can determine how much it would cost to rebuild almost every property in the country. We have an insurance company right now that has pre-rated every home in New Jersey for fire insurance. Everyone has a rate. So if you call me and you're like, Tom, can you give me a quote for my house? I get that quote in 3 seconds. I put in your address, I have the quote.
So flooding is heading that way. Flood insurance?
It's using big data. And we've all heard this big data. The big data is coming to a shore property near you.
Now, I do have a question about
Every
that.
shore property near you.
Now, you said it is based on proximity to water and the cost to replace.
Yes.
All right, let's say, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. You have a house on the beach in Ocean City.
Yes.
All right, yeah, that is A, closest to water, and B, probably more expensive to replace because it's the beachfront property.
Yes.
And, all right.
Yes, so it's higher off the ground, so
Right.
you have pilings underneath of it.
Right.
It's just more expensive. You have wind strapping. Today the code says that every structure on the beach has to have wind strapping to keep the roof from flying off in a hurricane.
Right.
A lot of them have hurricane-resistant glass, which costs a lot of money to put those windows in.
So I guess the question is, that house that's on the beach that is more expensive to replace and closest to water will have the higher premiums than something inland. But I guess where I'm going with this is houses on the beach aren't usually prone to tidal flooding per se because the middle of the island or the bayside floods more.
Yes.
So would that aggravate or would that be unfair? Like in that homeowner, like, wait a second, I'm paying more. So I guess is the system flawed, or do you think the benefits of the system outweigh something like that?
Well, it's funny that you say that because there are people who believe it is flawed, and they say this is not fair. And I really don't. It hasn't come out yet.
Right.
I don't really have a position whether it's fair or not fair or flawed. I just do not know. But there is a group of people out there who are saying it's not going to be fair.
Well, it's just like how every property is different. Like just because your neighbor's flood insurance is lower rate than yours, it doesn't mean, just because you're in the same flood zone doesn't mean that you have the same threat as your next door neighbor. And that's why they ask for the elevation certificate.
Yes.
To show if you have the venting system.
We've had that. We've had two neighbors who pay different premiums. And of course, they walk out on the sidewalk and say, what are you paying? What are you paying? And they find, oh, mine's cheaper than yours, and we get the phone call. And normally it bears out. The home that is lower to the ground is paying more money. And sometimes it's only an inch or 2 inches. So the residents, the owners of the home, don't really see that difference. They look the same to me, but when you actually look at the piece of paper, the home that's higher off the ground pays less money. And that's the way FEMA works today.
And it's kind of like healthcare in a way where there's no perfect system for flooding.
There is no
because you're not going to make every homeowner on the out. Oh, that's absolutely fair. I'm 100% happy with what I'm paying.
That is true.
You're not going to get that, right?
Never.
So you just try to get the best system for the most people. And do you think that this second major change, do you think that's it? Like, do you think that this makes it easier for most people?
Well, I think out of the box, they're going to run into problems. Everything new, no matter what you're promising, it's going to be flawed to some degree, and they'll go back and revisit it. And they're going to, what's interesting about this is when they have to support their decisions with data, with actuarial data, and they have to do these actuarial studies yearly as a part of this renewal of the program. So they're going to be going back in front of Congress a lot, explaining what they're doing. So if something isn't fair, you can bet that Congress is going to say, you better fix it quick.
Well, here's a follow-up question to that. You said this has the potential, and it doesn't have to go through. What makes this system be implemented? Is it FEMA that decides this?
FEMA has decided through the National Flood Program that they're just going to change how they quote properties. It's just they've made an internal decision, and they're allowed. And Congress is not really happy about it. They're like,
well, they like to be involved in it.
Yeah, and FEMA's like, it's not on you. This is us.
So with those two factors, will they still consider what they have been, in the past, such as the elevation certificates and other things?
I imagine, I don't know. They kind of had this quiet announcement a few months ago, and it rolls out next October. So October 2020. So I'm sure we'll be learning about it, I would imagine, July of next year, about 3 months prior to rolling it out. And they're going to have to lay it out and explain what they're doing. And, the way things have worked in the past, they could roll it out, and then Congress can say, well, that's not fair. So who knows? They're saying October 2020, but it could be a year from the following October.
Now, Sandy obviously was part of the flood of queries and business and problems and challenges and for you, and you helped a lot of people. Have things quieted down since then, or are these changes you've talked about, is that kind of creating new buzz and new traffic for you?
Sandy is kind of in the rearview mirror. There's some people who feel that they should have been paid more. A lot of people got mitigation money to raise their homes. Whatever side of the fence you are, whether it was a good deal or not a good deal, it's kind of done.
Yeah.
Moving forward, I really think that FEMA is trying to fix a few things. They're going to double the amount of coverage a homeowner can buy. Today it's $250,000. They're going to be able to buy $500,000. A business today is capped at $500,000. They're going to be able to buy $1.5 million. So today there's coverage called increased cost of construction, ICC. So if you have a certain amount of damage, FEMA gives you $30,000 to elevate your home. That's even before the mitigation grant. They're going to double that to $60,000. So there's a bunch. Another thing is today you pay your premium one time annually. They say they're going to offer monthly installments. So I think they're trying to do a lot of things to make flood insurance more affordable and respond after the claim to people where they feel they have options. And the last thing anyone wants is to keep throwing good money after bad. For the homes that have had 1, 2, 3 losses, they don't want them to repair that house again. Let's get it up in the air, or give them money to relocate the property to a safer piece of land.
Now, we've seen, since Sandy, we've seen a lot of homes be elevated. A lot of people did get grants to do so. Do you think there will be funding available for people who have not had damage to their home yet, but they would like to prevent getting
Probably
flooded?
not.
So you had to have a loss.
The proof is going to be in the pudding. If you have a loss or have had multiple losses, you're going to be more eligible. The more losses you've had, the more eligible you're going to be for money. You're right, it sounds like really proactive, like, oh my gosh, my house is low and that storm's coming. I think FEMA wants to, if you've had the loss, we'll help you.
And we kind of have, we've been lucky lately after Sandy, after Jonas, after a string of storms. We had a quiet winter this year, quiet nor'easter season this year, quiet hurricane season so far. So far, but remember the peak comes in September, so we're hopeful things stay quiet, but people. Sandy helped spark a lot of people to action during these lull times. Like, what's the challenge of keeping that awareness up, keeping people active? He's a lull meteorologist, and keeping people. Hey, we can't let our guard down. Do you guys face that same thing? Hey, don't let this false sense of security. Things are quiet. Prepare for when they're not.
I would say yes. We are continually reminding people of the exposure to loss, whether it's a frozen pipe, whether it's a fire, whether it's your roof blowing off in a hurricane, whether your deck is susceptible to a collapse because you have 50 people out on it in a summer party. We are constantly sending out memos. Keep your home up. Maintain it. Talk around your windows. When there's a storm, when you go on the news and say, hey, there's a hurricane tracking in, we're telling people, bring your lawn furniture inside the garage or inside the house, because if that wind kicks up, it's going to fly down the street and go through someone's window. So you're right. Sometimes people become a little content when they don't see things, but we know, and you know, there's always something else coming. Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? I don't know, but there's always going to be something else.
Dan, do we have any Facebook comments or questions?
Lots of hellos as usual. Tony Cassiota, hi to you. Daniel McLean says, yes, bring the snow. I guess that was a question too, guys. We were talking off camera. Non-related. Do you prefer the 100-degree heat with a 115-degree heat index, or would you want 6 inches of snow outside right now?
I'm team winter.
You're team winter.
I'm a winter guy. I live at the shore, but I love to ski and snowboard.
And I'm team winter, being from New England as well.
3 for 3.
And there are people that say, in the summer they want snow, and in the cold winter cold, they're ready for summer. And that's the beautiful thing about 4 seasons. If you're not happy, wait a little bit, and it changes. That's the great thing about living here. Paul Evangelista has a question. For you, Tom. Our home is below the minimum flood elevation. Can my insurance agent quote us a cost for flood insurance from minimum height and higher prior to any work being done?
Yes. Private market. Anyone can get a quote through private market. And it's been around for, I'd say, a year and a half. It started with one market, and we have about 7 today. So the number of competitors to FEMA keep growing, and as there's more players in that space, there's more opportunities for people. So I would say, call your insurance agent, get a quote.
Now, can he compare, like saying, all right, this is my quote now, what if I do this? Can he get like a quote if he has flood codes, or if he has, can you speculate or not? Do you have to have the work done first?
No, we can help speculate a little bit. That to kind of determine, hey, if I do this, it's going to cost X, and how many years is it going to take to get that payback?
Which a lot of people want to know before they spend the money.
Exactly.
How much? When am I going to see the return?
Will it be worth it?
We definitely can help with that in that area. Yeah.
Let's see what else we got. Carol Oak says snow. Daniel McLean says snow. Now, it'd be interesting when we have a foot of snow outside in January, saying, all right, guys, do you want snow or do you want 100-degree heat? I bet you it tips in the favor of 100-degree heat. So people are like that. Ray Riley, Ocean City resident, says, hi, guys. Kristen Kaiser, not liking the heat. Sandra Coarties, nice to have you on as well. Nicole Accardi, hey, you guys. And Juliana Haslam says hi. So nice to have all you guys on in this hottest day of the summer, and officially the first 100-degree day since 2012.
Wow.
Now, we know what happened in 2012.
We do.
We're hoping that 100 and hurricanes aren't, and they're not. There's no correlation. So that was our last 100-degree
That was
day.
in July of 12.
I believe so.
And then in October of 12, Superstorm Sandy.
I will also say, not to further the speculation, the year before we had 100-degree days, and that was Irene. So 2011 hundreds Irene, 2012 hundreds Sandy. Haven't had anything until this year. Now there is no correlation whatsoever.
Does it warm up
but
the
it's
water?
Interesting.
It
doesn't. No, it doesn't. But it's just a coincidence.
Okay, I hope so.
We hope.
Because we don't want to go through that again. What's interesting about Sandy is if you lived in South Jersey, it was a 50-year storm, meaning the water got to the 50-year height. In North Jersey, it was a 100-year storm. It had way more tidal surge. So we look at it much differently than the people in North Jersey. We're like, oh, it was bad, but
it was worse.
We got through it. Up north, whole different story.
And we use those phrases, 50-year storm and 100-year storm, loosely, because people think, oh, we got a 50-year storm, we're good for 50 years. It means on average they happen once every 50
But didn't
years.
that kind of work with the storm of 62?
It did.
And then 50 years to the day,
did.
almost,
Right.
we had Superstorm Sandy.
Right. But sometimes you can get a Sandy type storm, the next year get a Sandy type storm, and then nothing for 100 years, and you get a 50-year storm. So it's all about averages. Once you get one, doesn't mean you filled the quota, you're done for a while. Like you said earlier, you should always be ready for the next one.
Yeah, and what's interesting, that people might not know this, a 100-year storm means it's a 1% chance of reaching that height in 100 years. So that's what a 100-year storm is. 1% chance of getting to that level.
Good point. Let's see. Vicky Hitman says, and of course I'll see. Are you talking about flooding from major storm events or even flooding from thunderstorms? Seems like we flood more often than usual from a severe pop-up storm here in Hamilton. So Vicky's in Hamilton, not in a flood zone, and they can get that flash flooding we were talking about, from heavy rain and thunderstorms at the beginning. So maybe not in a flood zone, but flood insurance isn't necessarily a bad idea. It's cheaper, and it's not a bad idea.
It's cheaper, and especially if it hasn't rained for a while, the ground gets hard. And so the hard rain really has nowhere to go. It can't soak in easily.
Or if it rains too much, the ground is like a sponge, it's wet, it can't soak up any more rain, and the water goes right into your house.
It happens.
Tom, is there anything you want to talk about?
No, I think we've covered it all. I appreciate the invitation to come out and talk to you. I love what you're doing. I think it's amazing communicating all the changes to people who live at the shore and even live inland, so they understand how this thing's changing, and I just enjoy being a part of it.
Now, how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more about it?
You can go to heistinsurance.com. You can call our main number. We have 15 people who help people in the personal lines department with their home, with their flood, other types of personal insurance.
So thank you so much for joining us again for the 4th time.
So you know what's coming now. If you've done this 4 times, how do we end the show?
Oh, it's not necessary.
Well, this might be different. It might be unpredictable here. A pint glass instead of a
surprise
t-shirt.
me, actually.
Well,
because you already have 3 t-shirts.
count me in.
3 t-shirts.
Count me in. I'm thrilled.
So now
And of course, you get free refills on that now.
For how long?
On Tom's
it's a
book.
lifetime.
A lifetime of beer at the Irish pub.
Just put it on Tom's tab.
Yep.
All right, and then free refills
Thank
as
you.
much as you
Thank
want.
you. I appreciate it.
And you
Very
can
much.
watch Tidal Flooding Talk every Sunday night, 7 p.m. from the Irish Pub, all brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. Visit our website. Our CIL webcam is up, and we hope the goal is to bring webcams up and down the Jersey Shore to many more towns in the coming months, and hopefully that comes to fruition because it's such a useful tool to have. All right, our guest next week is Assemblyman Armato from Atlantic County. So he'll be here to talk a little bit about hopefully the bipartisan effort in New Jersey to combat tidal flooding.
Thank you for watching. See you soon.
Have a good night.